That might help.
You can still hear it. It's fine. I was just like, why can't I hear this guy talk?
Okay.
Welcome to the Quest Culture Podcast, your place for everything sci-fi, fantasy, horror, action, and in print, movies, and in television, usually. But today we're going to do a little bit of something different. We thought it would be a little bit of malpractice if we didn't have an episode to discuss the upcoming election, because that is something that I'm into, and I'm fortunate today to have two great guests to have this conversation with you guys. Sean Roberts, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. And my boy Kai Will. How you doing?
I'm good. Good.
General question off the top of your head. What kind of anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10 do you have about this election coming up right now?
9.8.
Okay. 9.8. And why is that?
I don't know. Like, look what happened in 16? Everybody thought Hillary was a shoo-in.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up with what we ended up with.
Yes. Yeah. So
I don't know. And then just seeing the amount of just hate and the MAGA, I don't know. I'm up in the air on that.
So it's you have a real sense of trepidation about what
Absolutely.
might come. Okay. Kai, where do you fall on this in terms of your level of anxiety?
In terms of level of anxiety, I would say I'm about a 5 or 6.
Okay.
I'm really not moved that much because much of the things that we're talking about, national elections, which we are initially, things haven't really changed for my group that I represent, which would be black people. So, there are some things that I'm concerned with, but overall, no, I'm not, vested all in the process of saying, I have anxiety, I'm nervous that if this doesn't happen, if this person doesn't win, this is going to happen. No. Mm-mm.
Okay. I'm going to get into that a little bit more with both of you, but a general question out to the table. Have you always been political, or is this something new that's manifested, like as you've gotten older, or is it something you've been focused on, from younger?
I don't know. My degree's in political science. My mom was chair of the Democratic Party for the city I grew up in Olean.
Oh, excellent.
One time. I don't know if I've necessarily been political. I've been vocal, we'll say, about my feelings and how I feel about it. But since probably 2008, I've been really voicing my concern more on social media and like that, but not always.
Okay. Gaia.
I would say since a kid I was always more in tune to history, and that did include politics as well as many other issues. I would say I started to become directly involved in the process probably a little bit before the pandemic, that I took an interest to it around the same time as Michelle did, but becoming a part of the process, a stakeholder, if you will, I would say that would be about 2018.
2018. And what was it about 2018 you think that?
Well, my daughter was born in 2017, and when I became president of the Parent Association, that's when I started getting involved in local politics, meeting a lot of the stakeholders, a lot of the gatekeepers in local politics, and then it just blossomed from there into me taking a vested interest in it and how I could affect it and do my part.
Is that in the Kai Royal?
The Royal Foundation. The Royal Foundation is, we focus on education mostly. We're not limited to education, but providing support for the youth in the area of social emotional learning, career training, education, and health, wellness, nutrition. And also I am chairman of the advocacy committee for Black Influencers United. So I've sat on the at the table involving policy for districts, the Black Studies curriculum. We advocated for it. We got the $30 million from City Council to implement it in all the districts throughout the Department of Education.
Excellent. And so that has really been, so the foundation has been a bridge for you into local politics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, without question.
Are you thinking about getting into politics down the line, or are you Are you thinking about becoming more of an advocate, or just working through your foundation?
I've absolutely considered getting in politics down the line. There's a lot of things that I'm not pleased with. That I think it's time for a change.
Okay.
But yes, the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Shell, what about you? Have you ever think about getting into politics? Because we
No.
talk politics all the time.
We do. No, I don't think I'd pass the vetting process.
I mean, I think the vetting process is pretty much done at this point, right? I think.
Well, true.
I
Look,
mean, if
we
you
have an
have-
office here, but
Right. If you have some people who can run it still, I think we might have to take another look at this vetting process. So let's talk local politics since we're here right now. 75% of New Yorkers think that Mayor Adams should resign. I'm just going to throw that out there. What do you think about that?
Do I think he should resign?
Yeah.
No.
And just so anybody listening, Mayor Adams is indicted of bribery, fraud, and taking illegal foreign campaign contributions, I think primarily from Turkey, right? So you think in light of that he should not resign?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's one of those things. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So, if I'm very consistent in my views with these things. Does it make it right what politicians do? No, but I'm not going to stand on my soapbox and be outraged when it's a black man that is doing essentially the same things that every other politician do. He's playing the same game, the same rules, and it is much of this fake outrage. I will say this, the only thing that I could say probably when Damian Williams, who's the district attorney of the Southern District, New York, when he read the indictment, I would say the fire department opening up the building probably was the most egregious
The Turkish embassy.
thing. Yeah, the Turkish embassy and opening the building and it not passing inspection. But, to say that, what are we talking about? Airfare, hotels, campaign donations, they all do the same thing. I don't selectively choose my outrage for things unless it reaches just an egregious threshold. But I'm not going to selectively be outraged for things that they knew that the man was doing since 2016. It didn't bother you then, and now it bothers you for reasons that we'll get into.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Shelly, what do you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay,
You don't think he should resign?
stay in office. Why? I mean, I think how it was handled, his team and himself, they were sloppy. Like the text messages, they were just sloppy. Like they made it an easy investigation. But sitting there, I don't think he should leave at all. Except
So those who, the argument would be made that, and I do understand the hypocrisy, but it should be that there should be a higher standard for these public servants. That there should be no instance of obvious bribery, and that we should demand more. And I get that's the argument. I don't. I think I'm fall somewhere in the middle. I'm not sure whether I think he should resign or not. I think what happens to like the Bob Mendez's of the world, and I think if you bring that on yourself, then you should pay the consequences of it. And I think that I fall somewhere on that spectrum when it comes to Adams, only in that, not him in particular, but I just feel like politics needs to be cleaned up. And I feel like that we should expect more from our elected representatives, and that because other officials conduct themselves in these ways, that we shouldn't blanketly accept that that's how it has to be, that's the modus operandi of being in politics. But that's kind of where I fall on that. I think we have to clean it up. I think in light of what we have happening right now with the presidential election especially, I think we could do better. And I think to just tacitly accept that we're going to have these criminal actors in positions of power is problematic.
can you expand on that?
I think that we should not have people in power or in positions of influence who conduct themselves in such a way that we wouldn't even advocate for our children. Like we would tell our kids, don't do that. I think that's the test. I think if someone conducts themselves in such a way where we would scold our kids for that kind of behavior, because what are we doing when we are mentoring and raising our kids? It's to show them how to be good people, within society. That's in general our goal in general, right? For your daughter, I would assume that too.
What is the standard of the behavior? Because if you're saying
Not taking bribes.
Well, then you wouldn't have a politician in office.
Right. But that goes to a larger. I mean, that goes to.
We wouldn't have any politicians.
True, but does that mean we don't address the actual question? Does that mean we don't fight back against things like Citizens United? Does it mean we don't try to get money out of politics so that it's very clear who is being funded by, foreign governments is bad enough, but bad actors we have to worry about as well. So I think the minute we let one politician skirt, they're all going to skirt, and I feel like that's why we have what we have right now. What do you think?
I think there's much truth to what you said. I'm also a realist in how things work and the nature of this beast. Politics is socioeconomic Darwinism. It is survival of the fittest. And voting is a quid pro quo, something for something. So with that being said, when it is survival of the fittest, well, people are going to do things that benefit their group. And sometimes those things might be a little bit unsavory, so to speak. But again, I'm not going to go up in arms and use the black guy as the example when essentially no one was outraged prior to that. So I'm not going to, I really don't, I'm not.
Was no one outraged prior to that, or did people just do what we're doing right now?
Well, they accepted it as they chalked it up to the game. It's like, when you take a test, I don't know if you guys ever had this done. I had professors or teachers say, cheating is allowed, just don't get caught. So this is what they used to tell us that.
I have never
They
heard
used to say cheating is allowed, just don't get caught. So I say that in that regard to say that, listen, if you're doing it and you're not caught, yeah, it's wrong. It's like if a tree falls in the woods, it doesn't make a sound. But you have to be smart about what you're doing. But I'm not about to be offended and up in arms when it's the black guy. Nobody else was offended all these years before. So if we're going to set a standard, well, let the standard be set for everyone. Okay. Let everyone be held to that same standard, and it's not like that. It's so much hypocrisy. So I'm not going to get offended by it. No.
Yeah, I mean, can you think of another example of a recent politician who has conducted themselves in that kind of manner and not stepped down or been able to keep their?
Well, who wanted to hold on to office afterwards? So I think who just got convicted? What's his name in New York? He was
in Jersey.
In New York.
George Santos.
Oh,
I believe it was just recently sentenced, where they were fighting back against the allegations.
Mendez.
Well, you know what? Let's think of something that's familiar with everyone. Okay, if you're talking about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, okay, without a doubt, the money in Ukraine with the Bidens, like without a doubt,
suspect.
I mean, come on, and everyone turns the blind eye. No one is bothered by it, and it's just business as usual. So that's what I'm talking about with this double standard. I'll say this much: today we are at a place in politics where it used to be about the issues and what was right, and I think today more so than any other time in history that people are loyal to ideologies, whether they be on the left or the right, whatever they are, and anything that is said, they will only acknowledge and what resonates with them. So it's not even like, okay, you know what? I could see that's a good idea from the left, or I can see that that's a good idea from the right. If it goes against their ideology and their agenda, well, then it's blasphemy, it's garbage, they should be tarred and feathered. So there are things that Joe Biden has done, okay? People are unbothered with it. They're unbothered by it because he is a Democrat, he is a liberal, and it resonates with a certain group. And there are things that people do, that Trump does, that people say, oh my God, he just killed and ran over 20 people on the FDR. Like, what are we doing? So that's what I'm talking about with the selective outrage that people have, because it resonates with their ideologies. I don't get caught up in that. I don't get caught
I guess
up
I'm
in
just generally outraged. But I get what you're saying. You're not. So you feel the same way about Adams? I know you're not a huge fan of him.
I was never a huge fan of him. I understand what you're saying, and I understand what Kay is saying. But stay in the office. I would. He's not being forced out.
No, he's not.
He's not. That's the thing. He's not being forced out. Everybody sees these charges, and he's just still running the city, staying.
Brendon, the older I got, I realized that everyone has a fallacy attached to them. Everyone. You can go back to Martin, you can go back to Malcolm. Everyone has a fallacy attached to them. Now, it just so happens how big of a fallacy is that we're going to throw out the baby with the bathwater,
right,
so to speak. So I don't get caught up in that. Two things can be true at the same time. So there are things that I don't agree with or I don't like about Eric Adams, and there are certain things that I do think that he has done a good job on. So, for example, when we talk about MWBEs and the reallocation of contracts, which stands for Minority Women Business Enterprise, specifically in education, this was like the Good Old Boys Network. The contracts that were allocated went to the same groups for the same amount of years, getting the same amount of money. So before he was elected, I was part of these meetings, and we looked at it. Less than 1% of these contracts went to, at the time we were talking about specifically black men. Less than 1%. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars. The Department of Education has a $30 billion budget, if I'm not mistaken, if more. That is a larger budget than some countries, okay? And less than 1% of those contracts are allocated to
black people of color.
Well, I'm not talking about people
You're
of
talking
color.
about black people.
I'm talking about black people.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't do the people of color.
Yeah.
I don't do that. So with the NWBEs, it's like, hey, wait a minute. We have to reevaluate this. And what Mayor Adams did and the Chancellor, David Banks, did, what they did was they tried to now give some of that money to black folks. And the powers that be didn't want that to happen. So now this goes beyond the level of the Chancellor and the Mayor, okay, who said, no, we can't come up off of that money. So they came up with Project Pivot. And Project Pivot was sort of a way to create a separate set of funding to go specifically to schools that were in need, that needed those resources, that were looking to hire CBOs, community-based organizations, that were from the community. And that's one of the reasons why I was put in the position where I was allowed to now compete for some of these contracts. You have specifically the cap per school that you can get per contract if you're a non-contracted vendor, which I am, non-contracted vendor with the city. NWBE, they said it was $25,000. And that's how much you can get per school year, per school. And they said, no. Why are we only allowing them $25,000 if the school wants to do more money with them? So they changed the legislation to raise it to $50,000. The mayor and the chancellor did that. That's a game changer. That's a big deal. You're able to get $25,000 more per school. Well, guess what? The comptroller is not changing the wording of it in the accounts payable office so that it can actually be enacted. So these are things that people don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We're talking about a lot of money that is changing hands or being taken away from other groups.
Right.
And they're not happy with it at all. But these are some things that are being done that no one knows that he's done.
Do you think the targeting of him is coming because of some of this attention that he's bringing to this disparity in funding?
I think it's one of the reasons. I don't think it's the driving force.
Not the driving force, but a contributing.
It's a contributing factor. It's minute, but it is a contributing factor. Ultimately, the I guess the whistle or the spark that set everything off was his indifference of the migrant situation when he actually started to speak out against it. Eric can be his own worst enemy at times. Eric thought that, he truly was going to run for president and be the
Really?
Democratic.
No, he didn't think that.
Yes, he absolutely did.
Eric Adams?
Listen to me.
President Eric Adams.
This sounds
He
so
absolutely,
ridiculous.
now whether or not, listen, I'm telling you what the man believed, okay? And that is something that he thought, well, I don't want to say too much about that, but he did believe that. He absolutely believed that. I'm looking you straight in your face and I'm telling you
Unreal.
that he believed that.
Okay.
So, he thought that he would play along with certain things or go along with part of the game to get where he needed to get. And, it became evident that that wasn't the case. And, he spoke out against the migrant crisis that is putting such a huge strain on New Yorkers, on taxpayers. Mm-hmm. And he spoke out against it. Mm-hmm. Now, he misspoke when he said that New York is a sanctuary city. I think that was a bad thing to say. You could have just stayed quiet and said, listen, we're dealing with this. We're trying to modulate the situation.
Why do you think he said that? Why do you think he made that error?
Well, he thought that Eric has a very unique ability to say the exact right thing immediately followed by the exact wrong thing. It's very, very unique. It's something that you've never seen before, and you're like, yo, all right, okay, brother, okay, no, too much, no, God, it's one of those things. So I think he said it because, he thought that he was on that ride, he was on that, plane of elevating, politically where he wanted to be, and I think, at the time, it sounded like the right thing, and Papa Joe and all of them was like, all right. And then he was like, wait a minute. The city is hurting from this. This is a big deal. The city can't sustain that.
Would you guys think, in your top, let's say 3 concerns for the upcoming election, would you put immigration as one of those, as one of the top 3? In light of what you're speaking about right now just from your experiences with migrants in New York City.
Do you want to take that first?
Top 3?
Top 5?
5, maybe 3 now. I don't think 3.
Okay.
What's more powerful than one? What can I do that's more than one? 1,000%. It absolutely is the number one issue. Without a doubt, it is absolutely the number one issue.
In this election for you?
Oh, without a doubt.
In the presidential election?
Without a doubt.
Interesting.
And
Without
yourself?
a doubt.
Probably 5. I think it's important. I think we have to look at the funds that are being allocated to these neighborhoods that are having to take on this burden, because it is a burden. Even though that the United States is made better by immigrants, I fully believe in that. But you have to apply the resources so that we can be able to make sure that not only we take care of immigrants, we take care of the people in those neighborhoods. I think there is a justifiable anger about the fact that immigrants are getting, they're getting the funding required, they're getting the support that is necessary, and that the people that are in these neighborhoods who have been advocating for that kind of support for decades are not getting that kind of support. So I think there's a justifiable anxiety, at the very least, about the situation. But for me, I would put it at number 5 for now, just because I think there's other things that are far more pivotal to for instance, I think democracy is a bigger, is in peril, and I think for me that's a bigger importance than immigration right now. I know you're former military, right?
Former military, veteran.
Democracy's not important for you. The
I'm
former
prioritizing.
president trying to overthrow an election is not important to you.
I'm not. No. The reason why. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Don't know. Listen.
I look at, again, I said before that politics is socioeconomic Darwinism. I don't know how familiar you are with Dr. Claude Anderson, and I read his literature, his books, his seminars. I have to, in order to identify something or to address something, you have to understand how that thing came to be in the first place. So many of us do not understand how an issue came to be in the first place. So with that being said, my priority politically is for my group, that is black people. Everyone else is doing the same thing for their group. No, they would purport to say different, but they are worried about their group. And what you espouse and what you actually do is something totally different. So with that being said, I am prioritizing my group, and I'm seeing how the policies affect my group, and I'm looking at what's most important. So if I'm looking historically and I'm tracking these things and seeing what did we do, what happened, how did it affect us, I do not subscribe to the people of color. I do not. And the reason why I do not, that is a policy that was implemented in the 60s during the Nixon administration by Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And it allows for something called benign neglect. So every time you state black, when you say poor people, all the people, people of color, you're best to believe nothing specifically will be done for black people, okay? It's called benign neglect. Oppression of blacks and slavery and all these things was very specific. There was nothing broad and ambiguous about it. Therefore, it requires very specific solutions to address it and to rectify it, not broad and ambiguous solutions for all. I do not subscribe to that. So with that being said, when there are large groups, and there's never been in recent years this large amount of non-black immigrants, and that's who specifically it is, non-black immigrants, what they are doing is they are displacing us out of
In
the...
what way? How so? How are they displacing us? Because that implies that they're taking us and moving us
it was very interesting. Dr. Claude Anderson did the study, did the research. I forgot the exact numbers, but as soon as non-black immigrants come here, their earning potential and value goes up, and for everyone that comes here, the black person goes down. Okay, that is economic financial displacement. Now, when you also talk about physical displacement from your neighborhoods, well, I mean, this has been done before. You look back after the Immigration Act of 1790, where there was a zero quota on black immigration. You have to remember something. The Irish, the Italians, Jews were not considered whites. The only reason that they were ingratiated into white status is because they said, oh, wait a minute, there's too many black slaves in the South and in this country that's outnumbering us. They saw what happened in Haiti and said, that might happen here. So we have to get some more Europeans in this country, classify them as white. They were not considered white. That is a fact. And then they said, all right, we have to give them land. We have to give them these things to offset the number of blacks. So all they're doing essentially is repeating history. It's not a coincidence. So if you look like from the 50s and 60s, look at the white numbers in this country. Now look how they dwindle. Look how they dwindle. They have to offset that. Well, we've already done Jews and Irish and other groups. We have to look to non-black Hispanics. Don't pay attention to some of the Africans that come here. It's a very small, minute number. So now what's the next group? The Asians, Indians, non-black Arabics, non-black Hispanics that they are bringing into this country to make black people a permanent underclass. They are creating a new voting bloc. So now there's no reason to placate to us anymore. You don't matter. And they're getting us out of the way. If you didn't get anything, if it was like pulling teeth to get something when you were the number one minority in this country, you think you're going to get something when you're the number 4 or 5? Do you really think that? So that is why that is the priority, because everything goes with economics. Everything goes with economics, whether you're talking about healthcare, access to healthcare, access to education, all of these other things. This is true racism. this is what I fear for us. That's when my anxiety comes.
Are you saying it's systematic, that this focus on bringing in non-black immigrants is systematic in order to absorb them into a general voting bloc? Are you saying, or they're specifically being absorbed or by the Republicans, or like what is your argument there? Because
it's intentional.
it depends how they vote, right? It depends how they vote, right? If they vote with us, then they're
not. Since when have you ever seen another group stand up and advocate for the betterment of black people?
Nobody advocates for black people better than black people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, since when have you seen black folks advocate for everyone else?
All the time.
Well,
okay, so when you say, are they voting with us, why would they do that? They're not going to do that. The Cubans that came to this country in Florida and Miami, when Jimmy Carter said, everybody come inside, everybody come to America, did they look to? No. Elian Gonzalez, old black people with signs. Let Elian stay, let Elian stay. What happened when the Haitians rolled up on the beach? You see any Cubans? See any non-black Hispanics advocating?
Why do you think that is?
Because everyone understands how this works. It's very frustrating. We seem to always be the last ones to the table, the last ones. So when I say the things that I say, many a times people say, "Oh my God, you're a Trump supporter. You're a Republican." No. Trump is a jerk. He says stupid things. No, I just understand the history of these things. I have to look at things where I used to get caught up in the Democrats, Republicans. We had the conversations at the gym, and we would go back and forth. You know, love the conversations in between our sets, working out. You know, but then I had to say to myself, I said, okay, I got to look at this. What am I doing here? What am I trying to address? And then when I was always a reader, but then I started reading the right books. And I started really seeing, okay, this is truly the issue. And much of it is that black people look to address the symptoms of racism as opposed to the causality. They're not one and the same. So when you're trying to address the symptoms, you just go keep chasing your tail. Just go keep going around in circles.
Right.
It's essentially been
facts, they're not the actual cause.
Essentially been 70 years. We've been doing the same thing.
Same thing.
We have been marching in place.
Well,
Okay?
I think the theory is that you align yourself with like groups so that you form a stronger block, so that you can advocate for each other.
No, sir.
That's the argument.
This is capitalism. This is a competition. Why in the world would these other groups look to help you, the least favorable of all the groups?
Well, you would think because they were helped that they might decide to give that
come
back.
now. Come now.
Ideally.
Come now.
What's the number one for you? What's the number one topic for you? The number one concern about this?
For this.
What motivated you? Because you voted already.
I haven't.
No, you haven't voted already.
I vote on Tuesday.
Oh, you voted.
I'm the person that always votes on.
So when you go in there and you standing there, what is the thing that drives you?
For me, it's a lot of women's rights. It's what they're trying to do. What a lot of those states have done. They've taken away women's rights. They're taking away a right to have an abortion. Why are we have these mediocre white dudes who get to choose what I do with my body? It's been going on for years. I mean, this didn't just start. And we have he's stating that he's going to dismantle Department of DOE. And there's so many things that fall under DOE. And those are my 1-2 right there.
Do you feel like there is a disconnect when you speak to some men about the priority of that particular?
Oh, absolutely.
concern?
I got into a heated argument Sunday. I won't say the name. With someone, he told me I was a registered Democrat. Now Trump this, and hit me with what about Hunter Biden? I'm like, he's a crackhead. Like Hunter Biden, he hit you with, and he's like, oh, Obama did the financial crisis. And I was like, no, he didn't, but okay. He wasn't in office, but okay. Stuff like that. But then I said, well, what about, women's rights? What about this? And he's like, I don't care. He point blank said he didn't care. And I was done talking. That was a wrap for me.
So they didn't care?
Didn't care. Didn't affect him. Didn't affect him. Didn't care. We're done. We're done. I have nothing more to say.
think
conversation over.
you have to. I'll say this pertaining to women's rights, if I may.
Go ahead.
No, to say I don't care. That goes back to what I said. I prioritize my group. And again, I look at history. So, if you're looking at history, what you had in 1866, when black people are now free, you had white women trying to attach themselves to the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments to the Constitution and make it about women's rights. And initially, the Supreme Court said, no, what are you doing? What are you doing? No. This is about black folks, and the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments to the Constitution was created to reverse the burdens that slavery had placed upon blacks. Not a change, but that's a side conversation. Now let's fast forward 100 years. Now you have the Black Power movement that's going on in the country. It was about black unity. And once again, you have Dixiecrats and others who managed to hijack that by attaching sexism and women's rights to the movement that was going on in the country. The mistake, what had happened is that black women attached themselves to a white women's feminist movement, which had nothing whatsoever to do with us. People say, well, it was about men. And I asked them a simple question. I says, well, let me know, did black men have their foot on the neck, so to speak, of black women during the 350 years of slavery? They said, well, no, that's silly. I said, okay. Or did they have it on their neck during the 100 years of Jim Crow? No. Well, we're already in the 60s. So what are you talking about? This was about a beef that they had with their white husband. Now, maybe they had a legitimate beef, but when they went over to Frederick Douglass and asked him to advocate this, he said, I cannot. He said, it is like comparing a headache to cancer. I might feel for your argument, but I cannot. So when black women attach themselves to that fallacy is when we would disrail. So I bring that up to say, today, I am not going to get on board with things that are germane or issues that are germane to other groups' issues. Now, do I think that there are some things that we have in-house between black women and black men that we need to address? Absolutely. But I can't say, for one, affirmative action. I'm happy they did away with it. And the reason why I'm happy that they did away with it is because this is something that essentially was created by black people for black people to address black issues. Guess who's the number one beneficiary of affirmative action?
White women.
White women.
We know that.
Guess who gives affirmative action all of its substance? We do. So I'm not going to advocate for women's issues as a whole. I have to add the context to that. I can't sit here and say that goes back to the economics and we talk about women's issues. Black women have the number one deaths during childbirth.
Yeah.
Okay, number one.
No
in the
matter the
country.
socioeconomics.
Okay, number one. I have a problem when black women had to fight or black people had to fight for health care, to get adequate health care. And there are people that have been here for less than a year that are being fast-tracked to get these resources in front of black women, black people, when we have been at the bottom of the barrel. I have a problem with that. It's like, you just got here. These are sisters that are citizens. How are they getting these resources before American citizens? So you have to be careful with how, when you say women's rights, it's like, wait a minute, what are they really trying to do? You have to always add the context to these issues. And you mentioned the Department of Education, and people say he's trying to dismantle the Department of Education. Well, the Department of Education was created in 1979 under Jimmy Carter. Okay? United States has fell over 10 slots down in the ranking. I can tell you firsthand, and this is something I can talk to you about as far as the Department of Education and the problems with it. It's the biggest bureaucratic agency in the country, bar none.
But you don't want to get rid of it.
You want to leave it to states?
No, I don't
we did
think
that before.
what you have to do is simply, again, two things can be true at the same time. You can get rid of that and replace it with something else. Okay? So, I don't.
But
He has nothing to replace it with.
And that's the point.
Yeah, I guess he's
the
already
point.
said,
you
just want
you
to
understand
dismantle it and
certain
get rid
things
of
are
it.
talking points. It's hyperbole for
But
an election.
But his his history is that he will go about and do things regardless of the outcome and then try to clean it up after the fact. So he will, if he says go in and dismantle the Department of Education
same thing.
without having a replacement for it. The same thing he said he would do with Obamacare.
I was just going to say with healthcare. And then they're
Which
like,
again
what
is
is
not
your,
perfect. It's
what,
not
no,
perfect.
it's absolutely not perfect. But what's your
to
next
say you're going
what's
to
your
get rid
next
of it
move?
and then have nothing to replace it, that
Well,
just
I
sounds like it's vindictive. It doesn't sound like it has anything with policy. Doesn't have
It's not being
with
helpful,
you or you
like-
or me.
I think that much of that is hyperbole and things that he's saying to appeal to fanatic part of his base.
Then what can you believe?
Well,
The guy's running for the highest office in the land. We should
Mm-hmm.
be able to accept at least half of the things he says is truth.
Obamacare wasn't dismantled, and he realized that
Because he couldn't. They tried 52 times.
I'm looking at these
50 something
issues
times.
for the Department of Education. I do not think it just get rid of it and it's like everybody's fending for themselves. I do think that it is a huge problem, and it is, I know for a fact, it's doing a disservice to students.
Absolutely.
A huge disservice to students. So it does need addressing. I think this time around, which Trump has said, he said this. He said admit a lot of things that he didn't know his first time around. I do think that now surrounding himself with people who actually knows some of these issues and can check a lot of his impulses. Again, when I say these,
Do you think they'll be able to check his impulses?
Absolutely not.
I think
Not this group.
Trump is a megalomaniac, without question. He's a megalomaniac.
So he's going to surround himself with sycophants then. He's not going to surround himself with
No,
people
I
that are gonna
wouldn't
check
say necessarily sycophants. When again, two things can be true at the same time.
You have the vice president that can't even admit that he lost the 2020.
I'm sorry?
You have the vice president. His second in line can't even admit that he lost the election that he lost. Right?
I mean, okay, what does that mean? It's much to do with nothing.
That means that that's someone who is at the very least disingenuous.
What does that have
more
to do
than-
with issues going forward?
Because for our elected leaders, we have to know what they're going to do. We have to understand that when they step behind the mic or behind a podium and tell us they're going to do certain things, or at least sit at tables with us, and we're trying to get them to advocate for us, that when they say they're going to do X, Y, or Z, they're going to do it. If we can't trust that the man, at least he could say, no, I'm not going to do that. But he doesn't even say that.
Does
He's
that bother
kinda
you
trying to
when they
do
don't?
everything
Does
for
that
everybody.
bother you when they don't do that?
What bothers me is wasted effort, and what bothers me is when a politician lies to me. That bothers me. Now, don't get me wrong, all politicians lie. But someone whose brand is lying is problematic to me. Again, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I've been an independent since I registered.
All right, I didn't know that, but go on.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know
I've
that.
been independent all my life. Because
Okay.
I'm about policy. I don't care about what the person looks like or what they.
Well, let me
what
ask
I
you
care about is
something.
what they do.
Let me ask you something. If I recall, when Joe Biden was running against Trump, I saw all of these old 60s marches about holding hands with black folks and things that we needed. Ain't none of them things happen.
You're
You
right.
talk about Barack Obama, who I was hugely disappointed with and
Me
upset.
too.
He addressed everyone else's needs. Specifically, one of the issues is Native Americans, 5 civilized tribes, got in the amount of $550 million. The black freedmen were supposed to be included to that based on the 1866 Native American Treaty. The descendants of the black freedmen were excluded. So when you talk about people saying things and not doing them, well, let's hold everyone's feet to the fire.
Agreeable,
Absolutely.
but I think that's why Joe Biden's historically low approval ratings right now are to that fact, especially among the black community. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act said he was going to pass it, didn't even bring it up. Raising the federal minimum wage, said he was going to do that, didn't even bring it up. Permanent child tax credit, said he was going to do that, it expired. So I think his issue is that the fact that he said he was going to do X, Y, and Z and did none of those things. In fact, one of the major things he's bragging about, which is the CHIPS bill, is really a giveaway to corporations. That's what that is. Yeah, we'll see maybe some benefits down the line, but we know what that was. So I get that, but I think that's primarily his issue right now, which is why he's polling so badly, even with what's happening overseas.
It doesn't hurt that he doesn't remember his name.
That doesn't help either. You know?
Or what a poll
I
is.
mean,
But I
you
think
can't say that much more about Trump either.
I don't
I don't think he's all up there.
I don't get caught again. Whether or not I like someone as a politician, to me that means
Let's
that
take
means
like
as
out
much,
of it. Let's just talk
as
about
much
let's talk about what they say
if-
and what they do.
well, if we're talking about policy, again,
What
I-
policies is
well the immigration policy.
Mhm.
That for me, when I'm looking at this, politics is a menu. When you go to a restaurant, there are a lot of things on the menu. You don't get everything. You don't taste everything on the menu. There's certain things that look, you're not going to get that. I'm an adult. I understand that. There are many things that I don't agree with, but immigration policies is one of them that I do agree with.
But what has Trump said for his policy? He said, "I'm going to just come and take everybody out." That it doesn't work like that.
Well, you're talking about the mass deportation?
Yes, the mass. It just
he wants to deport 10
Yeah.
million people.
that.
Like,
Well,
does
this
that-
is-
what does
doesn't
what does
work
that look
like
like?
that. And
Well,
then-
this is something
Like,
that has never.
camps on the border.
Well,
like
yeah,
this is the
like-
country that we
I
want
actually
to-
watched 60 Minutes where they were talking about that this
Yeah.
past Sunday. Did you see it?
I didn't see the whole thing.
Okay.
I recorded it.
Oh, you
I,
did?
I haven't watched it yet.
Okay.
So I did.
Well,
record it.
this is something that has never taken place in the history of our country in terms of that level of mass deportation.
There was internments, the Japanese internments in the 1940s.
That was something a little bit different.
No,
we're
but
talking about.
he's talking about that's the similar principle.
I don't know how the logistics of it is going to work.
But that's the
What-
point. Neither does he.
Right.
He's saying it.
What I do know is that the numbers of illegals coming in were far less under Trump than
That was largely because of COVID.
be that as it may. They were still
When he
there was the-
left, it's the same levels now as it was when he left.
well. We also again, Brendon is always context of Democrats when they put in the policies to limit the numbers to now like 25,000 a day or something like that. They did that in the 11th hour. For 3 years, you sat idly
absolutely.
by and then didn't do
But I
anything.
think that's because of Biden thinking it's that he could work with the people in Congress and try to come up with a bill, if it was even a priority for him, if that was even the case. But you're absolutely right. There were 3 years where they could have done something, and the excuse so far is that they were trying to move something through Congress. I mean that's fine, but it doesn't help for the families and the neighbors and neighborhoods that are affected by migrants coming in and essentially eating up resources for those communities.
Well, certain things that specifically that I would say, again, I've said it many times, is immigration. How exactly is that going to, I guess we're all going to be privy to see exactly how that's going to take place. The next thing I would say is the tariffs on China. And what I find interesting is this. I never attended a Harris rally. I'll hear Harris and others talk about these tariffs and how they're going to be passed on to American taxpayers. Guess what?
Consumer. Yeah.
They extended the tariffs.
They extended the China.
They extended them.
Right, but what Trump
So
is what
it's
Trump is
like,
talking
wait
about is what Trump is talking about is not specific targeted tariffs. He's talking about broad tariffs across many different countries in an effort to try to, according to him, increase manufacturing here, and so that we'll be more self-sufficient here. It's not going to work.
I do
Absolutely not.
think that the cost does pass over to
Absolutely.
the consumer.
That's
But I do
capitalism.
think, again, the context is some of those tariffs of China, if it wasn't working, they wouldn't have extended them. This administration did, in fact, extend.
So the Biden administration did extend those tariffs, but if you remember, was that were soybeans part of that? The soybean,
I don't know if
Yeah.
soybeans part of that. But
he had to subsidize American farmers because of that, because they were like $1 billion because
Not
they lost
to-
money because
right.
of those tariffs,
right.
right? So, it makes sense to a point, but if you just use it as a hammer, which is what he was doing because he had a problem with Xi at the time, that's not how you conduct foreign policy.
I do think that he
And you
needs
directly
help.
have Americans being affected by that.
I do think that he needs help with foreign policy. I do think that some of the issues with China, I do agree with. Again, the logistics of these things need to be espoused to the public, if you will. Some of the things, but there, I guess, there are certain things that I could say that it's by addition by subtraction, if that makes sense. So there are certain things that I'm looking at Harris and Democrats, what they want to do, that I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense, and he's not for that. One example is this $25,000 for the housing market. So I'm like,
don't have $25,000 credit for
$25,000 credit. That's absurd. It's a housing shortage. If you give everybody,
she's saying she's going to build 3 million new houses as well, right? I don't think the $25,000 house credit is a good policy, because I think
that is just basic economics. It just raises the cost of the homes, and then what happens additionally is you're going to get some poor schmuck that makes $60,000 a year, thinking that they can afford a house that is $500,000 a year. No, you can't afford that house. It doesn't work like that. You don't make enough for that. But there is, in fact, a housing shortage, and has been a housing shortage for what? Maybe that goes back to maybe the Obama administration. That goes back to a long time. There has been a housing shortage. But these
second term.
So
what's Trump going to do to fix that? Because you have private equity firms buying up tons of homes and
that's a huge
renting
problem,
them,
because Americans will never be able
up the market, which is why you have the inflation.
And I absolutely think that there should be legislation to stop that. You and I or no one else can compete with companies that are just buying up houses to make everyone renters.
There's a
going
company.
There's a bunch of companies, Canadian companies.
North Carolina, I forgot. I think it's a subdivision in the Charlotte area. They have stopped it. There's no more. It has to be individuals buying it. It cannot be. But it's just, that's what I read. I read that little thing, but it's just, it might be like two little like.
There's a limit of how many you can purchase.
They can't. The private equity firms can't buy any anymore because they were like killing the Charlotte market.
That's amazing.
And so there's a halt on that right now.
Good.
I do know that. I don't know. I think it's in all of Charlotte.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. But
So we can disagree on the policy points for Harris, but again, I don't see any kind of counter policy on Trump's side. All I hear is tariffs, and he's saying that tariffs are going to bring so much money to the American people that it's going to cure all things, from education to housing.
No, it's not a panacea. No,
I'm not saying that.
he said it. He's like 200%
No.
tariffs. I'm like,
Right,
that's
200%
absurd.
Listen, I can't. I
And
can't.
again, but your argument is that don't take him seriously.
Right.
So then, what do we take seriously?
No, what I said, what I said was much of it is hyperbole. Even I think what Harris, much of what she says is hyperbole. That's what politicians do. They are appealing.
But some of it is concrete policy.
Well, there are many things that I fundamentally disagree with what she's doing.
Besides the $25,000 housing credit, what else do you disagree with?
Well, here's a big one.
Just like one other thing.
This is a big one.
Yeah.
I don't agree with the LGBTQ agenda.
Okay.
What
go on
she is at.
And what is that in particular?
In when you're talking about healthcare and what you're looking to. Matter of fact, let me take a step back. Let's talk about schools.
Okay.
I think that every human being should have the right to live how they want, do what they want, be happy. I don't think that these things should be forced upon the youth in our schools.
Like what?
I do not.
What's
So,
forced?
when we're talking about the books, the certain books that's being put into schools, I can tell you that for a fact. Certain books that's being taught into schools. Why do we have certain curriculum being implemented into schools for these spaces? They're children. Children are not sexualized. Okay? I don't think that these things should be advocated for. I do not agree with that.
So why is it okay for these schools to take away books on Jackie Robinson, on Martin Luther King?
Don't agree with it.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm right with you.
So you acknowledge that
Again,
they are targeting certain types of books.
Again, that goes to be a dichotomy fallacy. Because I am against that doesn't mean that I'm saying that I'm in agreement.
Oh no, I'm
with
not
that
saying
other
you are.
thing.
I'm not saying you are.
Right.
I'm just saying that.
But,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, but the books, I guess I'm on the fence in the books. I understand what you're saying completely, but then I'm like, shouldn't we teach though as well? So
1,000%. Absolutely.
So you're not teaching them. Oh my gosh. Oh, Sarah, do you now someone wants to become Sam? You're not teaching them that. Like you're just showing.
Actually, there's many schools that is being taught.
Oh,
what
school?
It is. It is.
Sarah is now going to be
telling
Sam
you.
tomorrow.
I am telling you. I'm telling you right now. Again, I have a problem when these things are being forced upon children. I'm telling you that these things are. When you're forcing children to use pronouns, you're forcing them to use it. You're forcing certain language.
I mean, I don't
on
know.
them.
I don't know of any examples of school curriculums forcing that. I will yield to you that could be happening, because I'm not a superintendent in every school in the country, so I don't know. But I'm not sure that that's a policy platform. Like, I'm not sure that that is a policy platform that she has. Right?
I think indirectly,
How so?
it is. So when it has been shown this past administration that these things or issues related to these things are supported, I think you allow for spaces for this locally to happen where, for example, I'm not going to blame Kamala Harris or the Biden office, where I'm talking about if teachers parents are not allowed to know about a child's decision to require sex change or certain things that they confide.
But I don't know where that's happening, though. Like,
Oh,
what-
it's absolutely it's happening in schools.
Require a sex change. That's a doctor. Like,
No, I'm not.
what are you talking
I'm
about?
using wrong language, so please forgive me. I'm
Like
talking
transitioning,
about
like-
Like, if they wanna
transitioning or how they
transition.
write or certain
Or how to
language.
inform them, like-
So they're told that you cannot inform the parents. Okay, is this in every school district? No, it's not in every school district. When there are certain books that's on the shelves that kids have access to, I don't. They're children.
But then is it the responsibility of the
kids.
schools to monitor these books, or is it responsibility of the parents to monitor what their kids are reading?
You want to know what? And that's something that I am uncertain of, because when I'm looking,
Because this only affects like 1 to 3% of the population of this entire country. It's not. It's how many youths are trying to transition in.
no, not that, no, not that, no. I'm talking about the books.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
talking about the books. I'm just talking
okay.
about the reading. No,
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
No, I'm not
just
saying that.
I'm
No,
just saying having the books available. I don't see that as a.
no, I'm just talking about inappropriate books. I'm just talking about books that are
But what's
talking
what's
about, for
inappro-
example, sex, and sex. Why is sex books in elementary schools? Period. Whether it be heterosexual sex,
Are you
gay
thinking-
sex, any type of. Why are
So
they
you're
in?
thinking you're going K through 5.
Well, I'm going K through 12, but specifically,
then-
look, if you're a 16, 17-year-old, okay, your
They're
mind
gonna
is
see worse on their
developed.
on their
You-
phones.
you-
than
Right,
they see
your
on
mind is
TV.
developed.
I have friends who have kids,
Mhm.
and they're like, seen the most nasty stuff from probably 12, 13.
Where
to
did they see it
15
at? Where did they see
on
it
their
at?
phones.
Okay, that's on their phones.
On their phones.
That's
passing
something
their
different.
curriculum,
That's
but
something
then-
different.
But then don't they need to learn about it?
No, here's the difference.
They're
Here's the
talking
difference.
about it, and they're saying they're going to participate in having sex because they think it's different than having, oh, I'm still a virgin.
The difference is that it is on their cell phones. It is not in a learning institution. Okay, that's the difference. Okay, now
So
whether or not
learning about how certain people, I'm not, and I'm just saying,
No.
learning about how certain people decide to have sex. Don't you think that's something that should be learned in like a sex education class?
certainly not in elementary school.
No, not in elementary school. I'm not saying that.
Okay,
I'm
that's
saying,
what I'm
Well,
talking
fifth
about.
grade, then fifth
like,
grade, I
when you
remember,
start learning about sexual education.
right, in fifth grade, we had to sign, like how the body works. Did you guys go to have that class?
No, we didn't. No.
So, I did.
Yeah,
Did
no,
you? Yeah,
same.
you
how the
our
body works.
parents,
When I had to sign, we had to sign for it.
our parents had to write. It was fifth grade. I was 10 years old. I still remember how to. And the boys broke off in one group. One teacher
No.
taught it, and the girls did. That we had that. Your parents had to sign off, and it was taught.
We weren't.
When
It wasn't even taught.
We
no.
did. This is what happens to the body, and the body also happens. Girls get periods and blah 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 blah.
No.
And
Now,
the boys
now I'm
like
not,
that's
and I'm
in
not saying
fifth
they
grade.
should.
That was a fifth
we
grade
should
class.
be talking about sex with
Right.
kids. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying.
I agree with you on that.
I'm saying making sure people understand their sexuality and the things that might come up.
No, I don't think. I do not think
sharing.
that is for
You don't think
elementary
that's something
school.
that should be-
Absolute thousand. No.
Okay, so
because children are not
can have that debate.
sexualized.
We can have that debate.
They're not
and I'm
sexualized.
fine with that debate. I'm fine with that debate because they are kids, and people are very particular about how their kids should be educated. And I think that should be something that totally should be debated. That's fine.
Yep.
I just don't think that for me, because because of what's on the line, I don't know if that for me is enough to motivate me to vote for somebody right now.
Fair enough.
You know, I feel like someone who is trying to steal an election, someone who's trying to talk about bringing the DOJ, bringing all these government institutions under one. I mean, it's literally an authoritarian playbook that this guy is trying to manifest in this next term. To bring all of those government agencies under himself and for unilateral authority, that's crazy.
Well, how does that happen? Well, how much time? I know because you have.
We don't have much time left.
Okay. Well, how does?
Well, he's talking about it. If you guys have a second look at it, Project 2025 is the outline. 2025 is the outline of what they will do. You can disavow and say he's got nothing to do with it, but then you have 47, which is something that's on his website.
It's very much like 25.
It's probably much 20. So I'm just saying, like we can talk about the particulars of these plans, but you cannot deny that there is a plan that he has to bring these government agencies to heal underneath himself.
What plan do you have to say that that's going to happen, other than what you're reading in from the Heritage Foundation?
I'm not a prognosticator, but he's saying it. So whereas most times he's all over the fact, he's pretty.
He has sat there and said he was going to dismantle the federal government and then bring in Trump loyalists. That's crazy.
And how does that happen? That's not going to happen.
But you have to be loyal to him. And I think that any person who is a CEO of a company or a leader, you want difference of opinions. He doesn't seem to want that.
I understand that. How does that happen? So the same question you asked me, how does that happen?
He has stated it. Ask him.
Okay, but for you, so people say things many times.
So we shouldn't believe anything this guy says.
No, what I'm saying.
Even if he's saying he's going to bring people into his cabinet that are actually going to be able to affect some of this change. You don't think we should? We don't think we should fear any of it, because it's all hyperbole. The fact that he tried to steal an election before, that was just a fluke.
Listen,
don't worry about it. He's going to behave this time.
We only have
police immunity. We didn't even talk about that. How's that affect black people?
Well,
we talk about the
police immunity. Police immunity is a state issue written in the state constitution, and many states.
He wants to federalize it.
The federal government has no control over police immunity in local municipal police agencies.
What he could do is put pressure on the Department of Justice not to pursue cases that go after police.
You're talking about cases where there's a violation of civil rights, but we already know right now, and you know that is a state issue where certain states has opted out. Is that true? The Supreme Court has ruled on that, and there are certain states with qualified immunity that have opted out. So when he's saying, I'm going to implement this federal policy for qualified immunity, again, how does that happen? Because I'm very familiar with exactly how qualified immunity works. That is a state-level issue.
But his goal is to try to.
And how does that happen?
I mean, I don't know. He said it.
Case in point.
Doesn't mean he's not going to try. Look, this is. I think we're running out of time. How much time? Yeah. So obviously we couldn't. This went by too fast. It happens every time. I want to thank you guys for being here. Real quick before we wrap, if you had a prediction of what we're gonna feel like or who's gonna win on because it's not gonna be on Wednesday. We're not gonna know Tuesday night. We probably won't know Wednesday. On Thursday, who do you think is gonna be president of the United States?
Well, you know who I think. I think Donald Trump will be president of the United States.
What about you, Shel? What do you feel in your heart right now?
No, I don't know. I want to say Kamala.
That's fair.
I want to say Kamala. I pray Kamala.
Yeah.
I hope that it's not that person.
I feel like I understand all of the concerns that you have that you brought up. But I think there's a lot of overlap. But I do feel like the best person right now to at least stave off and to continue this Democratic experiment is Kamala Harris. Even though I have huge problems with some of her policies, huge problems we didn't get into this day, but. We're gonna see. I don't know who's gonna win. I think it's gonna be 50-50. I think we're gonna find out. But I do believe that women are gonna come out in force, and I think women are gonna save this country. And I hope that's the case.
Women always vote.
We're gonna find out.
No. 53% of white women vote against their best interest.
Yes. Thanks you guys for tuning in. This has been the Quest Culture Podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thanks.